Good evening, everyone. This week's Parsha is Parsha Shemos Tafshin Pei Daled. Right, we're going to begin with a comment with a comment on the first pasuk and first Rashi in the Parsha. So this is Parak Aleph, Pasuk Aleph, chapter 1, verse 1. Ve'ela Shemos b'nei Yisrael ha'ba'im Mitzrayma. These are the names of the children of Israel who came to Egypt. Eis Yaakov, with Yaakov, Ish Sebo, they came, each man and his household. Okay, and now we go through the names of Yaakov's sons: Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zevulun, and Binyamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher. Okay, so the obvious question is, we heard their names already. We know in Parshas Vayigash when they first came down, the Torah listed their names, and not only their names, even some of their grandchildren, even some of Yaakov's grandchildren's names. And this parsha, it's only the actual sons of Yaakov. But the question still needs to be asked, why are we repeating the names of Yaakov's children who came down to Egypt when we know them already? So Rashi comments like this: Ve'ela Shemos b'nei Yisrael. Although he counted them by their names during their lifetime, which was when they first came down to Egypt, Chazar umana b'misasam. He then again counted and mentioned them by name by their death. So why did you do that? Why did the Torah do that? L'hodia chibasam. By doing this, the Torah shows how beloved they are to Hashem. Shenim shalulukachavim, because they are compared to stars. Shemaitziam umachnisam b'mispar u'b'shmeisam, that Hashem brings them out and takes them back in by number and by name. Shenemar, as the pasuk states, Hamaitz b'misbar tzavaam, who brings out their hosts by number. L'chulam b'shem yikra, to all of them he calls by name. So we find this concept. Rashi brings out this is from a verse in the book of Yeshai, the book of Isaiah, that expresses that when Hashem takes out the hosts of the heavens, referring to the stars, he does it by number and by name. So now, when the Yaakov children were counted during their lifetime and now after their death, that is doing so to show how beloved they are. And they're beloved because they are compared to the stars. The stars, we have this concept of them coming out and being brought in by name, which is referring to the fact that by night they come out, by day they're not there anymore, they appear not to be there anymore. And when this process goes on, it says Hashem does this by name. What that exactly means, we're not going to go into right now, but this is what the pasuk states. He does it by name. So therefore now here too, when it came to the tribes of Israel, the sons of Yaakov, here also, in their lifetime, like the stars when they were out, they're counted by name. And now after their death, when they are kind of brought back in like the stars, they're not operating in this world anymore. It's also done by name. So the point of here, their name is being repeated, is because they are Hashem is because they are treated like stars, and they're compared to the stars. And just like the stars are brought out and brought back in by name, so too the sons of Yaakov were the same. And this is an expression of chiba. This is an expression of love. The fact that they are compared to the stars and called by name when they're out and when they're brought in, similar to the stars, this shows Hashem's love for them. This is an expression of love. The fact that he is counting them as he does, the fact that he is mentioning their names as he does by the stars, is a sign of his love for the Jewish people. Okay, so a few comments here. Number one, the commentary of the Gori Aryeh, which is the commentary of the Maharal of Prague on Rashi, says the following. The fact that we have this idea of them being compared to the stars and being brought out by name, the fact that we have this only by the tribes and not by other righteous people. Mipnei shashvatim em dugmas hakachavim, Meaning Rashi says it would seem that what we're saying here, that the Torah is doing here by the tribes, could have been applicable and said by other righteous people too. So why is it being specifically said here by the tribes? And that the Maral answers, that's because the tribes, the 12 sons of Yaakov, are compared to the stars. They're similar to the stars, we find that they specifically are very similar, let's call it, to the stars. Yud Beis Shvatim Keneged Yud Beis Mazalis. The Medrash, the Maral cites a Medrash that compares the 12 tribes to the 12 Mazalis, the 12 constellations. Meaning the point there is not just stars, but it's about the constellations. Each constellation includes many stars. Just like each tribe is not just one person, but includes many people. It's because of this that the tribes are the ones that are compared to the stars. The point of comparing to the stars is being specifically mentioned by the Shvatim because the Shvatim are not just individual stars. The Shvatim actually represent the constellations and include many stars. And the tribes also include many people. And therefore, the comparison, the analogy to stars is said specifically by the tribes because, again, the pointer of stars is not just the stars, but the constellation that include many stars, just as the tribes include many people. So what I take out of this is that whatever way we're going to explain what it means that Hashem loves the Jewish people by comparing them to the stars, that point is being said not only regarding the 12 tribes, but regarding all the Jewish people. It's something that's being said regarding the tribes and everyone that the tribes includes, which is the entire Jewish people. So this love that's being expressed by the tribes is not just a love for the tribes, but it's a love for who the tribes represent, which is the 12 tribes of Israel, the tribes of the Jewish people. So now, what does it mean exactly? What is this expression of love that Hashem is doing by comparing them to the stars? This is what the Sibsei Chachamim, another commentary on Rashi, asks. What is this love that's being expressed by comparing them to the stars? So the Sibsei Chachamim explains, just as stars really are there and giving off light by day and by night. You don't see the stars because when there's light, you can't see their smaller light. But if they're there, they're giving off light just like they do by night. Kach Hem Yisrael. So too Yisrael, the Jewish people. Kayamin Bailam Hazeh Ubailam Haba. They continue, they exist in this world and in the next world. Meaning, the stars look like at night, by day they're gone. But the truth, they're not gone. They're always there. And they're always doing what they always do. It's just that when you have the sunlight, their light doesn't count. It doesn't have any place. But they're always there. Although they appear not to be there, they are always there. So too by the Jewish people. Even when they are not apparent, you don't see them because they're not anymore in this world, but they have Olam Haba, they have the world to come, the afterlife. So the comparison to the stars is that just like the stars are always there, the stars are eternal, there's no point that the stars go away, they're always there. So too, the Jewish people, as we say in the beginning, when the custom is learn Pirkei Avos, we start off with a Mishnah from a Sanhedrin that says, Kol Yisrael yesh lam chelek lo'olam haba. All of Israel have a portion for the world to come. And therefore, the comparison to stars of the Jewish people to stars is just as the stars are always there, so to the Jewish people, even when they're not in this world, but they are, their existence continues in the world to come. So that's how he's explaining the comparison of the Jewish people to stars. Again, the way we see the comparison is the fact that the stars are, again, brought out by name. And here, too, the tribes representing the Jewish people are, in their lifetime, when they're out, so to speak, they're mentioned, they're counted by name. And now, after their death, when they're not out there anymore, they're kind of seemingly brought in. They are brought in, again, they're taken from this world. And they again, and then again they are counted. So we see this comparison to stars that expresses Hashem's love. That love that we're referring to, says Chachamim, is just like the stars are always there. The Jewish people are always eternal. That's how the Sefer Chacham explains it. I heard one time a very interesting explanation given by Rabbi Eliezer Gibber, who is the Rosh Hashiva in Providence, Rhode Island. And it was at a Malava Malka where he said over an explanation from Harav Lev Bakst Zatzal, who was Rosh Hashiva in Detroit, Michigan. And he gave the following explanation. And his explanation goes back to Bereshis. Okay, in Bereshis, when Hashem talks about creating the sun of the star, when the Torah talks about creating the sun of the stars, so what does it read? It reads, Vayas Elokim Ashnei Ha'oros Hagdolim. Hashem made the two great lights. Esamar Gadol Mishelas Hayom, the great light to rule by day. Esamar Katum Mishelas Halayla, the small light to rule at night. Veisa Koychavim, and the stars. So the big light is the sun, and the small light is the moon. Now, Rashi, famous Rashi, points out that first the Torah calls them both the Ma'oros Hagadolim, the great lights, and then a few words later, one is the large one is the small one. So what changed? So Rashi explains, Shavim Nivru, they originally were both created the same. The sun and the moon were both created with the same strength. V'nismat halavana shekitrka v'amra I efsher l'shnei malachim shisham shebekeser echad. And there's this famous, actually it's in the Gemara, I believe, where the moon complains you can't have two kings holding the same crown, and because of that, it was the moon's light was diminished for saying that. Okay, now that's why now at first they're called the great lights, and then it's called one is the great, one is the small one. Now, Rashi comments, Ve'esa koychavim, and the stars, al yedei shemiat es halavana, being that Hashem had minimized the light of this moon, here but tzva'eha lahafis daita. He now included its armies, meaning he not included. He therefore increased. He multiplied tzva'eha, those that accompany the moon, in order to appease it. Meaning Hashem had punished the moon for demanding, one of us has to be the king. And even after it was diminished, Hashem appeased it. Hashem still showed honor to the moon by giving it all the stars to accompany it. So the sun may be the stronger light, but it operates on its own. The moon, on the other hand, at night is a smaller light, but it operates together with all the other stars. All the other stars are considered the armies, the hosts, what accompany the moon. That's what the stars are about. So, if you think about it, this is a fascinating idea. The purpose of the stars is to appease the moon. They're not there for themselves. They're not there because Hashem decided, okay, there's a sun, and there's a moon, and there's stars. There could have been a moon. It would have been a smaller light, and it could have been the moon by itself. But Hashem decided to appease it, to show it some honor, to make things up for it, whatever this all means. But these are the words that our sages portray. But the point was to appease it by going ahead and now giving it gazillion stars to accompany it. That's how you see the stars. Even though a scientist will tell you, oh, the stars, right? Some stars are even larger than the moon, probably, right?
Moon is not star.
What?
Moon is not star.
It's not, or it is?
Moon is planet.
Okay. I mean, it's plain.
Planet.
Well, it's a moon of a planet. But the point is that but there are probably stars out there that are bigger than the moon. Much bigger than the moon, right? But the way Rashi tells us, the creation of the stars was not because Hashem was creating stars. The stars are called the armies, the hosts of the moon. And they were there for the purpose of appeasing it, of making it feel better, of making up to it somehow, in some degree, because its own light was diminished. So the existence of stars are not for themselves, are not for them to exist, to be on their own. Hashem didn't make stars for there to be stars. They don't have their own inherent value. Rather, their value is there, their creation was there, and everything about stars that's there is about appeasing the moon. The stars represent something that's not there for itself, but there for something else. That's their existence. Their existence is not about themselves. Their existence is to appease the moon. They are a metaphor for something not being for itself, but being there for others. When the Jewish people are compared to the stars, and that comparison is an expression of Hashem's love for them, that means that the Jewish people are like the stars. They're not there for themselves. They're there for others. The essence of every Jew is not to be there for himself, but to be there for others, to be there for Hashem. So the comparison to stars that expresses Hashem's love for the Jewish people is the fact that same way the stars' existence are not for themselves, but for the sake of the moon, for the sake of something else. So too, the essence of the Jewish people is to live not for themselves, but for others, which would mean for the service of Hashem and for caring and showing love for others. And in essence, that is how we emulate Hashem. Why did Hashem create a world? He didn't need a world, but the commentaries say that Hashem's creation of the world is about giving, is about doing for the is for being native, is about doing good for what He created. So when we emulate Hashem by, again, not being there for ourselves, but for giving to others, but for being there for others and giving to others. And that's what the essence of that's why the stars are about. That's what they were created for. They were there to serve, to make up, to care for the moon. So too, the Jewish people compared to stars means that the Jewish nation are not there for the service of themselves, but for the service beyond themselves, the service of Hashem and the service of others. That is the comparison. That's the comparison to the stars, and that is the basis and the reason for the love that Hashem has for the Jewish people. And that love that's expressed by comparing them to the stars, just as the stars are not there for themselves, but for something else, so too the Jewish people are not there for themselves, but for others, meaning for Hashem and to help others. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is a little bit further on in the parsha. Okay, and this is when Paro decides when Paro let's go. This is Parak Aleph, chapter 1, Pasuk Tesva, verse 15. The king of Egypt spoke to the Jewish midwives. The name of one was Shifra, the name of the second was Pua. And he said, when you assist the Hebrew women in giving birth, and you see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, if it is a boy, you shall kill him. The Masi v'chay, if it's a girl, she shall live. The midwives feared Hashem. They didn't do like the king of Egypt had said to them. And they kept the children alive. Okay, so let's go through a couple of things here. The midwives, when they are addressed, their names are Shifra and Pua. Rashi tells us that we know them by other names, right? Here they have different names. Now, why did they have these names? So Rashi tells us Shifra comes from the fact Shemishaperes es Havlad. Mishaper means to beautify. She used to, when the child was born, she used to align the child's body limbs so that the body should form in a beautiful manner. So Mishaperes Havlad means that she used to she used to beautify the child. So that's her shifra, from the word l'shaper, to beautify. And Pua is Miriam. Why? Because Pua means that she used to coo to the child. That's the word Pua. It means that she used to coo, the way that women, the way they soothe a crying baby. So too, Miriam, she was called Pua because she used to soothe the children, used to calm down the children. Okay, now, the Torah gives them these names. Why is the Torah giving them these names? The Torah just, these are cute names that she used to do this and she did that, so we call them these nice, cute names. Is that what we're doing here? When the Torah gives a name, a name essentially really identifies the essence of the person. In many ways, it's the spiritual DNA, the spiritual code to the person's essence. So if the Torah is calling them Shifra and Pua, right? This is not just, again, some nice, cute thing because they were great midwives and they loved the children. It's really telling us their essence. Shifra's essence is she beautifies the children. Miriam's essence is she soothes the children. She calms the children down. What does that mean? What does that mean this is their essence? It means, as we just mentioned, it means that Yocheved's whole essence is to do for the children. She's a giver. Pua's whole essence is to soothe the children. She's a giver. They do this because they give to the children. And through these kinds of actions, they now define their essence. When they define their essence, not defining the essence, she's a great baby, her essence is just taking care of children, which is something like really kind of nice and cute. No, it means to say her essence is taking care of children means her essence is to give to the children. Pua's essence is to give to the children. If the Torah gives them these names, this is their essence, and it's a compliment. It's not just an interesting fact. It's the Torah is establishing their essence, who they are. And Rabbi Yerucham Levovitz points out that you see from this that great people make themselves great, not only by doing great things, what we call great things, but by doing small things too. By doing small things consistently within the right way, that builds their essence. They become givers, not because of the fact necessarily that they went out and they did some kind of heroic act that was unbelievable, that took a lot of heroism and it saved who knows how many people. No, they could do that too. But the Torah is telling us, you know how you can become great? You can become great by these little acts. But if you take every little act and you realize it's not little, you realize it's great, then that act will make you great. If you realize the value of even the little things, then the little things become big things. And these little things, when done consistently, are going to define your essence. Define your essence as the Torah would now express your essence this way, which means you create your greatness with these kind of small actions. Sure, there are big actions out there that can make a difference. But what the Torah is showing us here with these names are that great people make a big deal even out of small acts. And because they give the true value to every small act that it deserves, those acts build them into and establish their greatness. That's what establishes their greatness. The small acts, not only the big acts. And maybe even the big acts don't do it as much as the small acts. But all the small acts being done consistently, and being done sincerely, and being done with the value that they truly belong, that is what creates the greatness in these great people. Okay, that's comment number one. Comment number two is the fact, so fine. So the Torah is telling us their names, and Rabbi Yerucham tells us that the Torah is teaching us a lesson about small acts is what builds a person. Okay, now, then the Torah tells us that Paro gave them orders, and they didn't listen. The Torah says, "Vatirena mi'aldoises alekim." They feared God and they didn't do as Paro had said. Now, let's say the Torah would have left those words out, the first words of the pasuk. If the Torah wouldn't have said the midwives feared God, it would have just said the midwives did not do as Paro said, and they kept the children alive. Now that alone would have shown us that they did something heroic, right? Paro told them to kill the boys. They didn't do it, right? That alone would tell us what kind of great act they did. So when the Torah is telling us that they feared God, what's the Torah telling us? Why they didn't do it? That's why they didn't do it, because they feared God? So Rabbi Yochanan Levavitch says that typically we don't find the Torah doing that. The Torah does not typically tell us the underlying cause of why a person did a mitzvah or didn't do a sin. When the Torah tells us that that they did something, it doesn't tell us. And I'll give it, maybe he's referring to this, for instance, right? We have the parsha where Yosef, wouldn't listen to his master's wife, right? He wouldn't listen to her. Now, it does say that he explains to her when he's talking to her and explaining why he's not listening to her is because he doesn't want to sin to God. But the Torah doesn't say, and Yosef feared God, and therefore he didn't listen to his master's wife. It just says he didn't listen to his master's wife. It doesn't tell us, so to speak, what's going on inside the person, and inside a person's heart, inside of a person's faith. He's God-fearing, so he doesn't do it. Somebody goes in and says, "Why don't you eat this thing? It's not even, and you don't eat it because it's not kosher. So why are you not eating it? Because you fear God. Hashem says not to eat the not kosher thing. You fear God. That's why you're not eating kosher. But the Torah, says the Torah does not typically, when the Torah talks about a person doing something or not doing something, it doesn't typically lay out, why did he do it? Because he feared God. It doesn't tell us the underlying, the underpinnings of what's going on. Torah kind of leaves it to us to figure it out. But I think an example like by Yosef. When Yosef didn't listen to his master's wife, it didn't say, and Yosef feared God and didn't listen to her. It says that when he explains it to her, but it doesn't say it before that. That was his conversation with her. But it doesn't tell us that's why Yosef didn't do it. So why here is the Torah telling us by Shifra and Puah that they feared God and they didn't do it? So Rabbi Yochanan Levavitch explains the following way. Vatirem Yaldas Elokim is not just, what was, because they were God-fearing, they didn't do it. It's actually telling us what they did. It's telling us that this fear of God was something that they were actively instilling into themselves. This challenge that they were facing, the Paro was telling them they have to kill these baby boys, was something that was very difficult for them to stand up to. We can't understand what it is to stand in front of a king, and what it is when they say to two people who, although they're from the tribe of Levi and they were not enslaved, but the nation is an enslaved nation. And now Paro says to them, you have to do this. You think it's so simple to go ahead and defy it? It's not so simple. It's not as easy, right? This is not a movie, that, all of a sudden the heroines, they won't do it and they get away with it and they still survive. That's not the story here. This was something very difficult for them to withstand. And so what they had to do to withstand? They feared God, which means that they actually instilled in themselves the fear of God. They had to tell themselves, we can't do this because of the fact that Hashem sees what we're doing and Hashem is going to hold us responsible for what we're doing. They had to actively go through these thoughts. They had to actively instill in themselves the fear of God to withstand the challenge. The Torah is not just telling us, what kind of people they were, what kind of a quality that they had, that therefore they didn't sin. That's not what it is. This is part of what they had to do so as not to sin. Vatirena, they feared God. That means they instilled the fear of God in them. And therefore they didn't do what Hashem wanted from them. And the truth is that the Chavetz Chaim writes, by the mitzvah Hashem Elokecha Tira, you shall fear God, that one fulfills the mitzvah of fearing God by the fact that when he is challenged to sin, and he reminds himself that Hashem is watching and Hashem holds him responsible, that's the fulfillment of the mitzvah of fearing God. So when it says that the midwives feared Hashem, it doesn't just mean they were God-fearing people. There was a fear of God that was part of who they were, and therefore they didn't do it. It's telling us what they did here. They feared God. They instilled the fear of God in themselves. and they had to contemplate and instill it in themselves. And because of that, therefore, the next thing is, and they didn't do what Paro said to them. Now, so I just want to conclude with the following. Now, if we take these two ideas we just said and put them together, that Shifra and Pua, they were called by those names because the Torah is telling us that was their essence. Their essence was of being givers. Their essence was to give to these children, to love these children. These were people that were selfless. And this is what their essence was. Their essence was being givers. Loving the children and giving to the children. That's what they were. That's what the Torah testifies to their essence. And at the end of the day, when Paro says, kill the boys, what stops them from not doing it? From where do they draw the strength not to do it? Not because of the quality of giving that they had. That's not what it was. Because this challenge, the pressure from Paro was way too much just for that. Was way too much just for that to be able to hold them back. No. They would not be able, just because they loved the children, to not do it. It wasn't possible. It was too much. The situation was way too much for them to handle. What gave them the strength? From where did they draw the strength not to listen to Paro? Because they feared God, which Rabbi Yochanan says, not just that was part of what they were, but they had to actively contemplate and instill the fear of God in them, and because of that, they didn't sin. And that is what a person, and the lesson here is that this is a response, this is the mitzvah of fearing Hashem. That when we're faced with a challenge, the way at the end of the day, there may be other ways that we can hold ourselves back from doing it, perhaps. But the strongest way, and the way that is our best chance to withstand a challenge, is by instilling the fear of God. Not just relying on the fear of God that we have, but to actively instill the fear of God in us. To remind ourselves that Hashem is watching, Hashem holds us responsible, and with that, hopefully, to find the strength to withstand the challenges that we face. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for listening.